Hey everybody, welcome to Krown Countdown U. My name's Ryan Sullivan, his name's Andrew Wadden. You know, Andrew, I was thinking, we've been working together for, 3 years now?
3 years, yeah.
3 years, that's a long time. And I don't really know a lot about you, aside from your red locks, your love for Brut cologne. Tell me a little bit about you.
Well, as you know, I do love Old Spice.
Wow, I did not know.
What you probably didn't know about me is I have Viking ancestry, and I love a good quinoa salad.
You, sir, are an enigma.
You know who else is an enigma, Ryan? The Manitoba Bisons. They're unbeaten all season long at home, yet winless on the road. Over the weekend, they were looking to snap this winless road streak and advance to a second straight Hardy Cup final. Standing in their way, the Saskatchewan Huskies, who just a season ago lost by a last-second field goal to these very Bisons in this very same game. Will the Huskies defend the Den, or will the Herd stampede their way into another Hardy final? Let's find out.
So off to a chilly Griffiths we go. Drew Burko hoping to lead his Huskies to a first playoff win since 2009, facing off against Keenan LaFrance, who torched the Huskies the last time these two teams met. Dying seconds of the first cue, Bison's up 14-9. Burko looks end zone, and he connects with Kit Hillis, who makes an outstanding over-the-shoulder grab. Huskies take their first lead. Second cue, Huskies back in the Bison's red zone. Manitoba gets called for a questionable PI. That leads to this goal line plunge from Tyler Chow, his second major of the game. Huskies put 22 unanswered points on the board and jump bump their way into a 22-14 lead. Brian Doby looking like an extra in a Wu-Tang Clan video, voicing his displeasure with the pass interference call with the Stripes. He'd head into the halftime down 30-18. Third cue, time for some more Chow. The rookie goes to the house for a third time in the game. That makes it 37-18 Sasky. This one's over, right? Well, not so fast. Burko gets plucked by Jaden McCoy, who takes it 54 yards to the house party, his second pick of the game. They would add a field goal, and suddenly they have the momentum. A few minutes later, McCoy blocks this punt. Jordan Lennon scoops up the leather, and he's off to the house party. What was a Sasky 19-point lead is now down to just 2. Start of the fourth cue, the cookie continues to crumble for the Huskies. This snap is high over Dylan Kolodinsky's head. He has to retreat to the end zone and concedes the safety. Judging by his form-fitting Huskies jersey, that was probably Kolodinsky's longest run of his CIS career. Next series for Manitoba, Riley Jones would nail this 23-yarder. That gives the Bisons a 3-point lead. Sasky would add a safety to cut that lead to just 1. Just over 5 minutes to go. Manitoba gets called for another questionable PI. Doby doesn't like that one either, but he'll love this.
First and goal to go from the 9. Burko throws and it is intercepted! Jordan Lennon down the sideline. One guy to beat, it's Burko. Jordan Lennon's got a convoy. Is Mitch Hillis going to catch up to him? And Mitch Hillis does and saves a touchdown inside the 10-yard line.
Jordan Lennon, please stand up. A massive 98-yard pick that leads to this trickery from the Bisons. LaFrance pitches it off to Nick Dembski, who fires to the end zone for Jordan Yance. What the heck was that? Manitoba pulls off the sandlot play with perfection. Will it be another playoff heartbreaker for the Huskies? Yep. Burko gets picked once again, his fourth gimme of the day, and that's all she wrote in this one. Manitoba stuns the Huskies and moves on to the Hardy Cup final for a second straight year. With the loss, Saskatchewan is now 1-9 in the postseason since 2006, while Manitoba wins their first road game of the year, which couldn't have came at a better time.
Calgary hosting Regina. Andrew Buckley getting loose. Brett Blasco getting loose. These guys would have big days. Pick things up in the second cue, and Andrew Buckley goes band on the run, and he finds Blasco. He beats 4 guys to that goal line for a 36-yard major connection. It's 13-0 Dinos. Buckley then finds Rashawn Simonize, who takes it all the way to the house. A huge run after the grab, and our play-by-play man Jim Mullen has more than a feeling.
I am sensing that we are going to get into blowout territory unless the Regina Rams find an answer.
His instincts would be correct. Buckley finds Blasco again. No chance anyone's catching this guy. Calgary wins with ease, 56-0. In head coach Frank McChrystal's final game, he got to watch both of his quarterbacks throw 2 interceptions each with no touchdowns. The Rams' year is over. And then there were two. It will be the Calgary Dinos and the Manitoba Bisons in this weekend's Hardy Cup final. You can catch all of the action on Shaw TV and or find us in your listings next week for all of your Hardy Cup results. Not even 1 month ago, the McMaster Marauders marched into GG Stadium and marched back out with their lone loss of the year. Ottawa dropped the Marauders 38-18, destroying what could have been a perfect season. Ottawa came into Hamilton coming off a big win last weekend over Windsor as well, technically making the GGs one of the hottest teams in the OUA. Could they upset the already upset again at Ron Joyce? That's the question. Ottawa, Mac. Marshall Ferguson probably not auditioning for the Harlem Globetrotters this season. He's in trouble early as he's picked in the end zone. Tunch Akaya with the thievery. Right back the other way though, and Derek Wendell picked off by Steven Ventresca. And he gets a nice run back after the grab as well. First major of the day though goes to Danny van der Voort. He Iron Robins this one into the end zone, and it's 10-blank for the hometown Marauders. They're loving it in Hamilton. Ottawa responds. Wendell hits Ian Stewart from 58 yards out. He's gonzo. This makes it an 18-7 game for Mac. They put the icing on the cake, though, after a nice Josh Van der Voort grab. Chris Pizzetta pounds it in from 5 out. Mac wins 42-31 and moves on to the Yates. A great year and a huge step forward for an Ottawa program that went through some pretty grim times just a few years ago. Derek Wendell deserves a lot of that credit through the year and a great performance in this game as well. Bottom line though, they are preparing for 2015 while the Marauders move on.
Western Guelph. Griffin's QB Jazz Lindsay knocked out of this one early. No problem, says rookie backup James Roberts as he goes deep over the middle right to Lucas Spagnolo. Spagno, as his friends call him, goes 62 yards all the way to the house party. Up by 4 in the second. Roberts to Spagno. Yes, I'm sticking with the nickname. They hook up once again. This time it's a 39-yarder. Guelph scores 28 in the second Q alone and lay the smackdown on the Mustangs. The rookie Roberts was impressive in replacement of Lindsay, who took a hard shot early in the second Q and didn't return. Rob Farquharson with a beast-like game for the Griffins. So the Yates Cup is now set. Guelph will travel to Hamilton to face McMaster in a rematch of the 2012 Yates final that the Marauders took 30-13.
The Mount Allison Mounties are on a serious roll, undefeated throughout the regular season, including a perfect 3-0 versus StFX this year. They went into the Loney Bowl final looking to remain perfect and win back-to-back AUS titles for the first time since 1984-1985. But the X-Men have played the Mounties well over those 3 losses. Would X be able to snap the CIS's only unbeaten school's season-long streak? Well, they're certainly up for the challenge.
Off to Sackville we go. The Mounties running into this one red hot. QB Brandon Lay and Chris Reed get things going early for the home side. They play a little hot potato and then air it out to Josh Blanchard. The defender slips and JB hauls it in. Nice little celly there. The Mountie pride, well, they're loving it, while Blanchard continues to celebrate. Still in the first, MTA with another tricky one. Lay to Blanchard, who fires it to the end zone. Roderick Joseph with the major, hit the Staples button. Mounties making it look too easy. Second Q, X in the Mounties red zone. Tavon Cook on play action elects to go to the end zone, but Nate Rostek says, I'll take that. MTA picked Cook 3 times in this one. A little brouhaha ensued on the sideline, but cooler heads would prevail. Fourth Q now, Cook under pressure gets dumped by Jacob LeBlanc. Pigskin hits the Macaulay mud. Sean Robinson scoops up the biscuit. That led to another touchdown for Roderick Joseph. Mount Allison remains perfect on the year, winning back-to-back Jewett trophies for the first time since 1984-1985. Josh Blanchard was the game's MVP. The win was the 6th AUS title for the Mounties program. They will now head to Ontario to face the winner of Guelph and McMaster in the Mitchell Bowl.
The Concordia Stingers have had a very surprising season, in a good way. They came out of the gates red hot, going 4-0 in the month of September to start the year. Unfortunately for them, they had to play Laval this past weekend. Needless to say, all good things, well, they must come to an end. Laval Rougeor hosting the Stingers. Here's what you need to know. Hugo Richard played in this game, and he played well. That should sum it up. This is a touchdown pass to Benoit Gagnon Bourassa. This is a touchdown toss to Guillaume Bourassa. Richard then sets back, throws up a Goodyear blimp and finds Tyrone Pierre. That's capped off by a nice little jive as well. Good looking dance. Richard then skies one out. Another perfect pass to Etienne Moisin. That makes it 43 blank. Richard caps off his day with his 5th touchdown before the half, this time to Matthew Norzil. This was an absolute killing, a complete no-doubter. 74-18 Laval, your final. Hugo Richard is out of this world. 14 of 17, 228 yards, and 5 majors on the day. A good year for the Stingers, nothing to frown on, something to build on for sure, but they did not have enough in this game. Their year is done.
Sherbrooke on the road in Montreal. Kick things off from the goalpost cam. Gabriel Cousineau fires this swing pass to Sean Thomas Erlington. STE then goes into beast mode, hammers his way down the sideline, and muscles his way into the bluegrass. That's a 54-yard major, and the Carabins are on the board first. Right at the end of the queue, MTL now up 7-3. Cousineau connects with Regis Sibassou, who gives his defender the shimmy-shimmy-ya and cracks off a 19-yard pickup. That leads to this. Cousineau back to Sibassou, who outleaps 2 defenders, comes down with the pigskin. Check out those hops, looking like a young Calvin Johnson. Move to the 4th, and this one gets put to bed. Cousineau looks end zone. Maxime Rioux comes down with it. Get that dirt off your shoulders, son. This one is over. Montreal takes it 40-13. Cousineau, Thomas Erlington, and Sibassou led the way on offense for the blue and gray, while the Carabins D were stellar, holding the green and gold to just 62 rushing yards on the day. So we're set for a rematch of last year's Dunsmore between Montreal and Laval. Of course, last year's game won by just 3 points by the Rouge et Or. If you're going to watch one game of football this coming weekend, this should be the one.
Some fantastic playoff action over this past weekend. I'm really looking forward to this weekend, Ryan, but I got to correct you on something that you said at the start of the show. You said I was a brute man when I'm actually an Old Spice man, which of course
I botched it.
I corrected you on that. But you strike me as an Axe man. You like that Axe spray cologne stuff?
That's where you're wrong, Andrew. I've found through careful study that I wear copper tone, and it gets the ladies all the time because they love the smell of summer.
Well, now that you know that about Ryan, you know that that was some useless information. Let's get to Jim Mullen and those Vanier Cups. You're watching Krown Countdown. You stick with us.
Doesn't work. Don't do it.
Here's where you can catch CIS action on your television this weekend.
In 1959, the Western Mustangs took on the UBC Thunderbirds in the first Dominion Championship. The rematch was in 1982, and many say the greatest team in the history of Canadian university football took the field.
Going back to the 80s, in 82 it was UBC playing Western. T-Birds had a record-setting season. Some people say this team is the best in history. Let's see how they did in the Vanier. Western with the game's first point, a missed field goal. T-Birds get the first major though. UBC legend Glenn Steele runs this in from 10 yards out. Steele will also set up this play-action strike. Quarterback Jay Gard hits Rob Ross. Ross falling down to make the catch, but he does, and the Birds are up 14-1 in the first quarter. Next T-Birds possession, it's Glenn Steele stealing the game from Western. UBC would score on their first 3 possessions. Kevin Redyard gets a field goal, Chris Burney gets a TD, but the Mustangs can't stop the T-Birds. UBC gets their first Vanier, a 39-14 win. Glenn Steele's your MVP, of course. UBC finished the year 9-0, won the Vanier, they won the Shrum Bowl 2 weeks after that. Sport BC named them Amateur Team of the Year. No surprise, they're seen as one of the best in history.
Hey, welcome back to Krown Countdown U. It's time again for the roundtable portion. We welcome back in, as always, rocking the black and purple, Jim Mullen on the far side, Gordon Randall in the middle. We've got Donnovan Bennett live from Sportsnet and Toronto. How you doing, Donnovan? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. Looking forward to some playoff football once again this week.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? We're going to start things out with you. Toronto Star releasing a story this past week pondering the future of the CIS on television. And of course, this directly affects you working for Sportsnet. What's your take on this?
Well, I thought it was a smart piece by Morgan Campbell, who's a great writer. And I think it spoke to some of the issues that we've seen covering college football and being a part of the coverage at The Score and now Sportsnet. I see how that issue is different for different networks. Having said that, I think it's a broader conversation, not just about the coverage of television in regards to CIS sports, in this case football. It's how we as a country feel about amateur sports. If you take hockey out of the equation, is there an amateur sport that we support at a high level? And the answer for me is no. So whether it's the broadcasters, whether it's people watching, whether it's people writing about it, I feel like we're very indifferent to amateur sport. Now, we're beside the United States, who's a monster in that sense, so I think we lose perspective because we see the NCAA and we see Ohio State, Michigan State, and what that means. But at the same time, I think relative to the rest of the world, we cover sports at the amateur level pretty well. But is it great? No, it could improve a great deal.
All right, former member in the OUA, Gord Randall. I spelled your name wrong last week. What's your take?
Well, it's still not pronounced that way.
Well, I know that, but that's how it's spelled. All right, it's phonetically.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sure the graphic gets it right every week. One of my big problems with this announcement.
Too, so.
There you go. One of my big problems with this announcement is the fact that Scott Moore, the CEO of Sportsnet, talked about how they're sinking costs into putting on these broadcasts and how they were losing costs. And frankly, I don't see how the costs soar so high when you're basically just driving around the province. Donnovan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you guys just drove to every road location from Toronto, correct?
For the most part, yes. But once you take, and I don't want to bore people, be too inside baseball, but once you take a production truck outside of its natural area, there's a cost that comes with it. And I think it's a prohibitive cost, no matter if the game's in Ontario or let's say it's in Quebec or out west and you use a truck out there. The issue is it's not even just a Sportsnet, I think, issue, not to be a company man. There's another network run by another phone company. And the weekend, they had a game that was Ole Miss versus Presbyterian. That's not going to do a higher number than any CIS football game. The difference is they didn't have to pay much to get that programming because they get it from a relationship with ESPN. The difference is not so much the viewership, but it's the production costs around having those games. And are you going to get a return on that investment?
Right, so now that that's been mentioned, we move on to how do you fix the problem? And I think that one of the things that would attract more viewers is, unfortunately, we've talked about this in the past, the OUA has become a multi-tiered league. And we've seen some results on University Rush in the past couple of years when it was still on the air, where the games were complete laughers, and that's not really going to draw an audience. Another thing that seems to come up over and over again that I think would really draw some more viewers in is more interlocked non-conference games. We see that in the States, they've figured this formula out as well. They start the year with these big neutral site games at the Georgia Dome, at Jerry World in Texas, and these games draw a huge viewer base. Like, for example, Oklahoma State played Florida State this year, so you've got viewers from the Midwest, or the Southwest, I should say, Texas, Oklahoma. You've got viewers from Florida. Those are two massive markets, and that's just in the home states of the teams that are playing and the home state of where the game's being played. If you get more of these matchups, your Western Saskatchewan matchups, your Calgary and Laval matchups, you are going to see a big viewer base, and I think that it's a significant argument to be made to get more of these interlock games that draw in multiple markets, because Ontario is the biggest market in the country by far, but it's still awfully limited when you're staying within the province.
Jim.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with a lot of that. We've talked a lot about that particular aspect in terms of a national interlock on this show. I think the national interlock has to kind of stand on its own. Those games have to count for something. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if Western were to play Calgary, those should count in the OUA standings. Those should count in the Canada West standings as well. And as we know, with a number of the leading schools in this country, they have alumni that have some money behind them and do believe in these programs. Where are you going to invest your money? You're going to invest your money if you want your programs to stay relevant, to get them on the national stage and get them onto TV. And insofar as supporting amateur sports is concerned in terms of media, maybe Sportsnet and TSN are not the places to look at in terms of a place to broadcast the games. Now that the CBC has made an investment into Olympic sports, and they've made a statement that they're going to be about amateur sports. Maybe there's a role there for the CIS to go to, because when Scott Moore is basically downselling the numbers for the Vanier Cup. He said that there were 200,000 people that watched the Vanier Cup. I know for a fact that it was 301,000 on one of the Sportsnet networks and 60,000 on the other. So in terms of pumping the tires up for a product that they are a partner in, he's doing a very, very poor job. So considering that they have the NHL on their plate right now, maybe CIS is better served by going somewhere else.
All right, we're getting into the absolute heart of this right now. We got Yates Cup, we got the Hardy, we're in full playoff swing here. Gord, what's your favorite rivalry right now?
My favorite rivalry always is going to be Queens and Western, and I think Mr. Bennett can talk about that as well. It's the longest standing rivalry in the country right now, and those two teams and schools hate each other till the end of their days. One of the better rivalries right now, I think, is Guelph and Western, and it's kind of an underrated rivalry in the Ontario Conference. We saw a few years back when Justin Dunk, who's been on this show a couple times, had a notable statement against Western. Those guys really didn't like Western. We saw another hard-fought game this weekend. That's one of the top rivalries out there. And let's not ignore the Atlantic Conference. Those four teams, particularly I'd say St. Mary's and StFX, are very bitter rivals, but those four teams, because they have such a small conference and so many games against each other, all four of them really have some genuine dislike for each other.
Donnovan, out to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it from a historical perspective, Queens and Western has long been such a heated rivalry, and not really just football, but also in other sports. And when you have CFL players betting every year on that game, then you know it really translates, it means something. Having said that, moving forward, I think not only what we're seeing right now between Laval and Montreal as far as a standard and a level of play, every time those two teams play, the level is so high. And I think maybe 10 years from now, you're going to see a rivalry like that in the nation's capital between Ottawa and Carleton.
Jim.
For pure excitement, it is Manitoba and Saskatchewan. If you take this year's games out of the mix in the regular season and you go back 3 years, the average margin of victory was 2.5 points per game between these two teams. And they put on a show last week in Saskatoon where it came down to the last play again. There were trick plays. There was a 17-point swing within 3 minutes. This always happens when these two teams get together. They're both offensively powerful. They can put points on the board. Fans show up to these games. And there used to be an award that was handed out for one regular season game between the two of them called the Harvest Bowl. It magically disappeared in 2009. Apparently it's a doorstop at a frat house somewhere in Winnipeg. I'd like to track it down because when these two teams get together, there should be an award on the line.
Yeah, I can attest to that because we went to the very first game of the year, the home opener in Saskatoon. It was Marty Schottenheimer hat night. An amazing atmosphere. They filled the barn. Yes, I agree with you completely. Let's get to the quick hits. 30 seconds or less. Something you want to talk about. Perhaps it's grinding your gears or you just think it's noteworthy. Quick hits. We'll start with Jim.
Well, let's talk about potential coaching derby out there, both with UBC and the Regina Rams. I had the opportunity to run into Mark Mueller, former quarterback of the Regina Rams, and he's the defensive backs coach for the Calgary Stampeders. He says he has not been approached by the Regina Rams, and he's quite happy where he is. I've got the word that some of the coaches took him aside after the game and said, you have to apply for this job. Now, two other names coming in the mix. Paul LaPolice, currently working with TSN. He's been approached by the Regina Rams, and there have been some discussions. And John Ford is a high school coach with Laboldus in Regina, just won the City 4A championship. As for UBC right now, it's Dave Sadu, an alumni, who's calling the shots over there in terms of what's going on with coaching. I hear they want to make a big splash. I'm not sure if that's the right direction with things right now. Two guys that used to be involved with UBC, Paul Orzetti, he's actually still with the staff. I think he'll put his name in. Bob Beveridge needs to be somewhere in the mix as well, even though he doesn't have any head coaching background.
Donnovan, out to you.
Well, I mean, you talked about parity earlier in the show and whether or not we need more of that. And there's some teams struggling, rumors that maybe there's some issues at StFX or Waterloo, and whether or not those programs will fold because of lack of parity. I don't want to hear any of that talk. Look at what Mount A has done this year and last year, back-to-back Loney Bowls for a program who people thought was going to die. I think you can use that model, a small budget, a small school, but high-integrity people working hard, and you can compete with the top teams in the country.
Gord.
I first want to start out by giving a shout out to two monster performances this last weekend. One by Rob Farquharson at Guelph, ran for 232 yards on the ground against the vaunted Western Rush defense. An excellent performance by him, leading his guys to victory. And I also want to come back out west. I don't like to make a habit of shouting out to my friends, but a guy that I happen to know personally, Jordan Lennon, fifth-year senior guy at Manitoba for the second week in a row, returned the ball to the house for 6 points on special teams, and also had a pick that he returned to the 2-yard line, almost put in for another score. Monster performance by him. We'll see the Bisons in the Hardy Cup this week. As for my picks this upcoming week, Hardy Cup, I'm going with Calgary. In the Dunsmore Cup, I'm going with Laval. My game of the week is going to be the Yates Cup, and I think in a hard-fought and very close game, despite the injury to Jazz Lindsay, it's going to be the Guelph Griffins on the road. My third road dog in a row. I'm 2 for 2 already. Let's see if we can keep it up.
We got to take the lining out of some of these helmets.
Yeah, this is bad.
Can we look into a sponsorship from Vaseline so they can just put that on a little
Can we just
easier?
request like large size helmets next year?
Yeah.
We hadn't really planned this bit out.
We take what we can get around here. Trust
We need to end the show before you lose circulation in your head.
This is better than last week's.
That's not bad. It looks like a snug, comfy fit. Donnovan, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated. For Jim Mullen, Gord Randall, Andrew Wadden, I'm Ryan Sullivan. Thanks again for joining us here on Krown Countdown U, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks for watching Krown Countdown U. Now, let's get out to the game.